Welcome to Brick by Brick, a podcast produced by Move Your Mind, committed to changing the construction industry, one conversation at a time. When it comes to mental health, the one thing that I've been doing for the past 12 years is just trying to show vulnerability and share stories. And this has been one of the most impactful things that I've ever come across when it comes to raising awareness and creating a safe space for people to talk about what they're going through. In this episode, I spoke to Erik Locke, who's the Chief Executive Officer at Incolink. He spoke openly, was incredibly raw and vulnerable, shared his own story, and truly leads by example. And in an area such as the construction industry, it's so important to see someone in his position sharing these kind of messages. I hope you enjoy this episode, and a huge thank you to Lendlease for supporting the Brick by Brick podcast. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to nickbracks.com, or you can purchase the Move Your Mind book at nickbracks.com/book. Erik, thank you so much for making the time to come on this podcast, mate. Really appreciate it.
I am delighted to join you. Thanks for the invite, and we're always up and about to talk about mental health and the importance of talking about it.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's so, it's been crazy since we launched this offset of the podcast for, tailored at the construction industry. We've recorded about 20 episodes of it, and it's had such a response. We've had so many people in different facets of the industry talking about it, and so many people reaching out, because I think it's just something that people want to talk about, but traditionally there hasn't been enough of a voice or enough resource, or no guidance when it comes to this area in the world in general, but especially in this industry.
I think that's right. It's an evolving conversation, and it's one that's making a difference. The trend is our friend in construction. Suicide rates are, we're seeing signs of some impact of these programs, and it's only because people started to talk about these issues and call for responses by industry that we actually started to deliver these programs on site, online, over the phone, wherever people want to access them. One of the blessings of the pandemic was adaptability.
Exactly. That's one of the best things that's come out of it. It's sort of forced our hand at really utilizing technology and being more flexible in how we learn, how we do things, and all that sort of thing. So, that's great. So you're actually seeing like tangible results from some of these programs when it comes to mental health?
Well, we do, because we have such a high uptake of people who've done general awareness sessions in our Blue Hats, our suicide prevention program, and you can therefore you can track the number of conversations they have and the way they're able to triage people, workers through to our counselling services, which is fantastic. So you can actually see somebody has come through the program, gone through to counselling, and it's been a great intervention. And those kind of brief interventions that occur on a work site are really critical. And then we work to give people the skills to stop feeling that way. But it's difficult, Nick, because the underlyings of the construction industry, as you have no doubt have observed previously, are very difficult for mental health. It's an uncertain environment.
It is. And how do you, is it hard? Do you find it difficult managing that environment with the different levels of it? You've got people on site, some people are working, different hours. There's just so many different levels of people to manage that are going to take on learning in different ways, absorb information in different ways, respond differently. How do you find solutions that can cater, to the many different, facets of the industry?
Yeah. So I think the important thing is that it's this. We offer programs that are bottom up rather than top down. So it is a peer-to-peer program at its heart, with your first contact being your peers who are wearing a blue hat, very identifiable, and they are your first and trusted point of contact. What's also important, I think, to bear in mind here is that the brand that carries the program. So we're a very trusted brand in the construction space. We protect people's entitlements so that when they're between jobs, which happens a lot in construction, we are there to support them financially or for financial counselling, mental health counselling, GP on site, the whole wraparound. We try to be the safety net in construction. So therefore, that cachet that we have allows us to the trust with our workers, our worker members particularly, and that's incredibly important.
Well, that's fantastic, and I mean, it already sounds like from what you're saying, and what we've experienced from the many companies we've spoken to, that you're really taking a pretty in-depth approach and going further probably, and looking at it differently than a lot of companies would. And I think I really resonate with what you're saying there.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we're dealing with is like a national tragedy, isn't it? If we're talking about it, one construction worker every 2 days taking their own life. That is something that is it's a horrific statistic, right? It is one of the highest risk industries in the first place, but it is at the highest risk end with suicide as well, and you have to take that seriously. It's a responsibility as an industry. If you can't fix the underlying issues in the industry, which are uncertainty, long hours, time away from family, often leaving in the dark, coming home in the dark, often substance abuse to self-medicate, and then the loss and then reconnection with pools of people who you work with for long or short periods of time. None of it's very good for your mental health. But we need to work to fix those underpinnings as best we can. But in the meantime, we need to come up with solutions that follow people wherever they are. So wherever a worker is, they're going to still be able to access us rather than it being worksite specific. If you're a member of ours, you're a member of ours, and you've got to be able to call on our services wherever you might be working.
I love that. I mean, it's critical, and we, like you're saying there, it's unacceptable that there are that many suicides. It's terrifying, and I think it's great that you're on here talking about it. Other people are now talking about it. We're trying to drive a lot of these conversations as much as we can, and it needs to be, because every single time, and I didn't, until we really dived into this industry last year, I didn't know these statistics, and every time I've told people about it, their jaw drops, they're shocked. It's like it's shocking. It's because it's already bad in society in general. So yeah, I mean, it's really important that we're just utilizing technology, doing anything we can to try and get these resources to people. There goes the dog. Well, got a little special appearance in this episode.
Thank you, Molly. Hi, mate. I'm on the phone. Yeah, I'm on the phone. Can we just leave it inside? Thank you. During the pandemic, I did so much media on COVID-19 testing and the COVID response every day, because it was very hard to put out the construction unions or the master builders, because everybody was. So they'd wheel me out as like the noble savage in construction, and every time Molly would have a barking fit. I'd be doing a piece of the camera, and Molly literally got up on the couch behind me and started barking at Virginia.
That's hilarious. It's so good.
I know.
Definitely lightens the mood. They probably at the right time. We're talking about suicide and all these heavy subjects. It's
well, I spent a long time. Yeah, that's right. So let's talk about rainbows and lollipops. But yeah, Nick, I think it's important to remember that the increased rate of insolvency, if you go back. I think it's in the early 300s a couple of years ago, up to over 400 in this financial year. So we always talk about the home buyers and the builder and how terrible that is, but there's a huge dislocation that goes with the workforce that people don't really account for when the story first breaks. But that's the construction industry played out in real time. To about 1,300 Porter Davis homes or whatever it was that were incomplete in Victoria. If there are a couple of jobs on each of those sites, there's 30, 3,000 plus kind of people that are impacted Australia-wide. That's a pretty shocking thing. And how would people deal with that if they were an employee and were counting on working on those kind of projects for years? It's very tough.
Lendlease is proudly sponsoring the Brick by Brick podcast. They're committed to the health and safety of their people and those they work with, and have been acknowledged externally for their focus on providing healthy workplaces. Lendlease is certified as a globally healthy workplace in recognition of their focus on employee health and well-being. In addition, Lendlease won the Multinational Employer category at the 6th Global Healthy Workplace Awards. They have a holistic approach to health and well-being and continue to grow their focus around mental health. Lendlease genuinely care and are out there not just to make a difference in their organisation, but in construction and society as a whole. We're very proud to have Lendlease as a sponsor of the Brick by Brick podcast.
And of course, it all comes back to the way the industry is structured with, payments, cycles, completions, payment, new jobs, workforce often outsourced. It's very difficult. I'd love to have all the solutions, but all we can do really, from my point of view, is mitigate the consequences of how it operates and trust our shareholders are working towards making it better as best they can.
Yep, and that's all that you can do. All we can do is our best in any of these situations, but it's really making that effort. And I think a lot of people know about it now, and that's great. But I think many companies out there are, just putting a Band-Aid solution over this and not really going to that detail to try and find a way to really improve it. And that is all we can do. So, it's taking that step. So got some other things I want to talk about. But before we go into that, are you able to give us can you just give us, our listeners, a bit of a background on yourself and the work that you guys are doing?
On myself personally?
Yourself personally, and how you came to be doing what you're doing, and then, the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, sure. My name's Erik Locke. I've been in and around the union. I've been in and around unions and professional associations for 30 years, and as well as political parties. I came to Incolink after being a chief of staff for the 75th time, and also a director of a PR firm for the 45th time. So, but I knew a lot about this sector because I've worked with Engineers Australia, the construction unions, and I had a number of people that I've worked with in the build form, and I applied for the job and I was lucky enough to get it. And it's a difficult industry, but it works because at the end of the day, everybody cooperates to build to make sure there's a sustainable industry, because nobody wins if it's broken. So I've been here 3.5 years, and I look forward to doing a few more.
Thank you so much for supporting Move Your Mind. We're expanding the offerings of the organisation, and we're tailoring everything we do to suit you guys and to try and answer to all of your needs and the questions that you send in. The book is available globally. You can find all of the links at nickbracks.com/book. And we've just released the Move Your Mind community. We've currently got a men's community group, a women's community group, a general group. We're going to be loading up other groups, and you can find all of the links at moveyourmind.me. This group's been created based on the needs of what we've heard and learnt throughout running Move Your Mind. And we have live events, we've got courses, we've got huge amounts of value, the ability to share information, share ideas, work in groups together to grow and share your learnings, to learn about different topics. You get email reminders. There's a whole lot of features in there. We're constantly updating it, and we're so excited to share it with you. You can find all of the information about it at moveyourmind.me. Great. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. So I guess when it comes to mental health in this industry, where do you see the biggest change that across the construction industry as a whole? What do you think is the biggest thing that needs to change for us to really start lowering some of these numbers, and with suicide and these issues that are happening? What do you see as one of the key factors in that?
Look, I think the main thing is dialogue, right? Mm-hmm. So we're getting a whole lot better at that. And because we have buy-in from the master builders, the CFMU, and the employers, we get good buy-in, and it is encouraged. People are encouraged to participate in our program, become blue hats, and that's the best thing we can do. Talk, just talk. It's not a taboo subject anymore.
Yeah. And how much, when it comes to that, with how are you seeing that within your organisation and other organisations? People are feeling more comfortable to talk about it in general?
I think so, yes. I mean, I have some kind of evidence to support that. 10,000 workers, our members, have attended an Incolink suicide general awareness session. We have 500 blue hat workers wearing the hat on site as we speak. And we have 7,000 plus members last year have some interaction with Incolink counsellors. So those are pretty good statistics. Trend is kind of up with all of them. And, as I said, the work of the unions and the employers has been key to actually make this an issue that they cooperate around to help solve. Not every state has the luxury of an Incolink, however. So mm-hmm. we are somewhat blessed here to have a fund of size enough to be able to deliver this without any additional cost,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I appreciate you sharing all of this, and it's again so great that you can talk so openly and share these insights on the industry. We finish every episode with 5 closing questions. So, as I was saying earlier, I'm not going to throw you too far under the bus here, but we'll see how we go. But the first one is a bit of a random one. What's your best childhood memory that comes to mind? Just a random personal one for you.
Nick, I know my mother won't be watching this. I had such a terrible childhood because I had 14 houses that I lived in by the time I was 18. So
my God,
mine was not the standard childhood. So I mean, I've had this question a bit, like from partners, etc. Isn't there something about your childhood you remember that you liked? I said, not really.
Yeah.
Leaving home was good.
There you go. So having childhood end was probably the best part.
Well, and for me, that was at 16, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So I made it end as soon as I could.
Yeah, which is, especially for this day and age, people are staying at home till 25, 30 these days, but it's young to leave home.
Well, yeah, and look, this is why I have some identification with construction workers and uncertainty. It's that living with uncertainty will give you anxiety, right? So will alcohol, abuse of alcohol and other drugs, and and they all go. That all goes hand in hand into a terrible cocktail. So yeah, I have identification with workers because of my past. And if you've lived habits like that, right, then you tend to be attracted to employment that's short term and relationships that are short term because that's what you know. And luckily, I've settled down now. But I chose high risk, short term occupations like politics and public relations and anything with an election where I could get defeated I was running straight at it. So you have to take. This is a very long answer, sorry, but it's self-reflection. But if you can take a step back and look at your life and say, no, it isn't working out well for me. Then that's the first step.
I love that answer though, and I can relate to that so much in what you're talking about there. Of I've done my own businesses and chased things that are short term and high risk, and you almost get addicted to that. And like you're saying, that mindset makes it very hard to have other things that are going to improve your life, like a long term relationship. And that I've made changes myself in that, and I've quit drinking recently just to even remove other parts, and it's incredible. Like I actually can't believe how much better it's made my life. Like it's difficult to make those decisions, but then the quality of life and the calmness that underneath all of that is huge when you sort of start to realize these different patterns that that many of us have.
Yeah, it takes time though. Yeah, like if you're gonna stop and change things, it's gonna take a month or three to adjust to it. And you just got to sit it through. Don't make any rash decisions. Yeah, I gave up. I gave up drinking 7 years ago. So.
Oh wow! Well, congratulations on that. And how difficult was that, or has that been, and how much of a change has that made to your life?
Huge change to my life. How difficult has it? It was very difficult. I mean, it's killed 3 members of my family, right? So it wasn't the worst. It wasn't the hardest decision to make. So yeah. But it wasn't. It was either I could keep this up and see if it works out differently to the other 3 members of the family, or I could stop.
Wow.
And that's again one of those things as you'd be experiencing is like it's changed, right? It's changed. You've got to stick with it and get. If you've got 30 years of doing things one way, 23 years, and then 7 years on the other side is you might reach some balance at the end of 7 years or so. Get back to where you were 23 years prior to that.
Yeah.
Quit smoking, quit drinking. I don't do anything. Basically a nun.
Oh well, yeah. The two of us are going to be fun to go out on a night on the town, mate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, but it is, and it's that point as well. And sorry, we're going off track, but this is really interesting, the stuff coming up here. But it is often, we can feel like we've made huge progress, or I've committed to this thing for 3 months or whatever it is. And when you zoom out and look at, hang on, in the context of my life, this is nothing. And it's so easy to give up on difficult things when you're not looking at it through that long-term lens and seeing it, in that very sort of moment by moment daily. We can get caught up in that. So it's important what you said.
Yeah. It just, yeah. I mean, I think there's that old expression, one day at a time. You just have to focus on what is happening that day, and it's very hard to do, staying present.
Yeah,
it is. Your terminology changes in the mental health space as you get older, but as you go through life. But one day at a time was what we used to say before we talked about being present. Or it's similar concepts. Just focus on what you're focused on now, what you can do now, and one day at a time, change your life, change the way you think about yourself, which is often the underpinning.
100%. Yep. Oh, anyway, moving on to the next one.
Yep.
What do you think is currently the biggest issue on mental health when it comes to the construction industry?
One of the biggest issues is still access to services.
Yeah.
So we work in civil construction, but if you're in residential construction, we don't have great penetration. We would help workers if asked, and we did just earlier this week. But it's still access to services. So, and that's not the problem necessarily with the worker. But if you're doing a 50+ hour week, you're working 6 days. On your one day off, a Sunday, are you going to want to go to the GP? Probably not. And
No chance.
yeah, and particularly to have to do a long session, a mental health plan. So access to services is the biggest issue, which means that there's probably less dialogue on some sites than others, and we just have to find a way to deliver content which is accessible everywhere, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What's your personal definition of happiness?
The West Coast Eagles not finishing bottom of the ladder would be great. No,
Yep.
unlikely. Look, personal definition of happiness is not having a lot of stuff or being lauded in any particular area, or well, it's contentment and structure, and that goes back to turbulence. So if I can construct a life which is actually finds joy in structure and the rails that I've assembled myself, right? Getting up at the same time, breakfast, exercise, work, and some balance. That's happiness. It's contentment.
Great answer,
I could
mate.
do that till I was 70. I could do that till I was 70. But
Exactly. No, I think it's a really, really good answer. What are you most afraid of, aside from the West Coast Eagles finishing on the bottom of the ladder?
I'm afraid that my dog might be reaching the end of her life.
Yeah.
What am I afraid
Sorry to
of?
hear.
No. I think what frightens me is always uncertainty. You can never have too much certainty, and that's when the war in Ukraine started. I panicked disproportionately to that, and I think I had a degree of PTSD post COVID because we did a lot of the COVID response in Victoria. But I worry very much about externalities, stuff I can't control.
Yeah.
And that's the human condition, I think. But it comes from again that turbulence that I've experienced all my life, where you want to control stuff, right? I don't want any more of that turbulence. I want to be able to control stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I worry about those externalities like a nuclear war, a global depression, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And like you're saying, there's sort of nothing, we can't control so many things, so it's just trying to find a way to keep bringing yourself back into what can I control, what's happening right now, one thing at a time.
Yeah, indeed.
So on a more positive note, what are you most proud of?
I'll limit it to the last few years. So I'm pretty proud of how we responded to the COVID-19 pandemic as an industry in Victoria, and with Incolink as a central part of that. Did 20,000 plus on-site tests and thousands of on-site vaccinations, which allowed the industry to stay open as the only industry staying open. So I'm pretty proud of that. Yeah, it felt like a siege quite often because you're driving through empty streets to go to work sites. It's kind of very dystopian, right? But it was something I'm very proud of. And my dog would bark during media interviews about the.
I love it.
And there were such highlights like we were going to do. I think we are going to do about 1,000 a month of these tests, and I got the phone call on a Saturday from this departmental secretary and said, could you do maybe 10,000 instead of 1,000 in a week? I'm like, no, how? But we managed to. So,
My God,
I'm very proud of that. It was a lot for an organisation of 50 to 60 people to take on, but it was great.
it's huge. It's huge, mate. So, well, thank you so much for making the time. Thank you for being so open. I've taken a huge amount out of this, and I'm sure our listeners will get a lot out of it, and really appreciate you making this time. And finally, where can we send our listeners if they want to learn more about Incolink?
Just to incolink.org.au, incolink.org.au.
Great. We'll have the in the show notes. We'll have the link there. So yeah, thank you again, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick. Have a great evening. Is it
early evening here? Yeah, early evening. So yeah, will do indeed. Appreciate it. Thanks to Erik Locke for joining me today on Brick by Brick. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to nickbracks.com or you can purchase the Move Your Mind book at nickbracks.com/book.